Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're getting into something really fascinating, the explosion in AI supercomputers.
Absolutely. We've got this great new data set looking at, what, over 500 systems?
Yeah, from 2019 right up to March of this year, 2025.
And it's crucial because developing that cutting edge AI, frontier AI, it really leans heavily on these machines now.
It does, and what's surprising maybe is how little detailed analysis there's been specifically on these systems, despite their importance.
Right. Lots on AI models, less on the massive machines behind them.
Exactly. So our mission today is to, well, unpack how these things are evolving.
We want to give you the key insights, sort of a shortcut through the data.
We're looking at performance, obviously, but also the resources they chew up, who's actually owning them, and where they are in the world.
The source we're digging into is the Trends in AI Supercomputers paper.
Okay, let's dive in. One of the first things that just jumps out is the speed, the sheer rate of progress.
It's pretty wild. The paper suggests computational performance is doubling roughly every 9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
That's incredibly fast. What's driving that kind of acceleration?
Well, it seems to be two things happening at once.
Okay.
First, the individual AI chips themselves are getting better each year, quite significantly.
Right. The underlying hardware improving.
But also, the number of chips packed into the leading systems is just ballooning year after year.
Ah, so it's more chips and better chips.
Exactly. That combination is what's really pushing that overall performance curve up so steeply.
But all that power doesn't come cheap, right? Or free in terms of energy.
Definitely not. The paper flags that the hardware cost and the power demands for these top machines were both doubling every single year.
Every year. That's a demanding trend line. What does that look like in practice?
Well, let's look at the leader as of March 2025, according to their estimates.
Okay.
xAI's Colossus system. They reckon it uses around 200,000 AI chips.
200,000 chips. Wow.
The hardware cost, somewhere in the ballpark of $7 billion.
Billion with a B for one system's hardware.
And the power, about 300 megawatts.
300 megawatts. Can you put that into perspective for us?
Sure, 300 megawatts. That's roughly the power needed for, say, 250,000 average homes.
250,000 homes. Just for one AI computer? That's
Yeah.
staggering.
It really highlights the energy intensity we're dealing with here.
And it seems like who owns these massive machines is changing too.
That's another key trend the data shows. Companies, the private sector, are rapidly expanding their share of the total compute performance measured in the data set.
So industry is pulling ahead.
Yeah, while the share attributed to governments and academic institutions has been shrinking, relatively speaking.
Interesting. So the big tech players are increasingly the gatekeepers to this level of computational power.
It certainly looks that way. They're the ones making these huge investments.
And geographically, where is all this power concentrated? Is it spread out?
Not really, no. The data points to a very clear leader, the United States. It accounts for about 75% of the total performance captured in this data set.
3/4 of it. Okay, who's next?
China comes in second, with around 15%.
So a pretty significant concentration in the U.S. right now.
Yes. And that obviously has implications for, global AI competitiveness and development.
Okay, so let's recap. Performance doubling every 9 months, costs and power doubling annually, private sector taking over, and the U.S. way out in front.
That's the picture from 2019 to early 2025.
Now, the paper does something pretty bold. It projects these trends forward. What might things look like in, say, 2030 if this keeps up?
Well, buckle up, because the numbers get even more mind-bending.
I'm ready.
If these growth rates continue, the leading AI supercomputer in 2030 could potentially hit a speed of 2 times 10 to the power of 22 FLOPs. That's in 16-bit precision, which is common for AI.
Okay, 2 times 10 to the 22. That's a number that's hard to even grasp. What about the components?
Such a system might need around 2 million AI chips.
2 million, up from 200,000 now.
The estimated cost to build it, maybe $200 billion.
$200 billion.
And the power requirement, potentially 9 gigawatts.
9 gigawatts. You said the current leader needs 300 megawatts. 9 gigawatts is...
It's 30 times more. Like the output of, maybe 9 large nuclear power plants, roughly.
For one computer system, that just seems almost physically difficult.
Exactly. And the paper really emphasizes that these kinds of projections, even if approximate, are critical for policymakers.
Right, because they need to think about the sheer resources involved.
Absolutely. Understanding the potential scale of hardware costs, the immense power needs, who's likely to control this tech, and where it's located, that's all vital for planning, for national competitiveness, for economic strategy.
So, wrapping up the findings from this deep dive into the Trends in AI Supercomputers paper, we've got that lightning fast performance growth doubling every 9 months.
Yep, paired with the hardware costs and, crucially, the power needs doubling about every year.
We saw that big shift towards private companies owning the bulk of this AI supercomputing power.
And the current geographical picture, with the U.S. holding a dominant share, around 75%, followed by China at 15%.
And then those projections for 2030, just staggering numbers.
Yeah.
2 million ships, $200 billion cost, 9 gigawatts of power.
It really does make you pause, and the paper suggests that power, that 9 gigawatts figure, might actually be the big bottleneck.
How so?
Well, just physically supplying that much electricity reliably to a single site is an enormous engineering and logistical challenge. It's so extreme it might force a shift,
A shift towards what?
maybe towards more decentralized or distributed ways of training these huge AI models, rather than concentrating everything in one monster machine.
That makes sense. It also feels like these machines are changing their role almost.
What do you mean?
Like they started perhaps more as scientific research tools, but now they seem like fundamental industrial machines.
I think that's right. They're becoming core infrastructure for driving economic value, which explains the huge investments we're seeing, especially from the private sector.
And looking at the geopolitics, that U.S. dominance, does the paper suggest that's likely to continue?
It seems likely in the near term, at least. The U.S. has leading cloud providers, strong AI research labs, and importantly, significant influence over the production of the most advanced AI chips.
But what about the downsides of this private sector dominance?
Well, there are potential concerns raised.
Such as?
Could it mean less access to these state-of-the-art resources for academic researchers, for instance, making it harder for universities to keep up?
Right, if they can't afford the entry ticket.
And also, does it reduce visibility for governments? If most cutting-edge development happens behind closed corporate doors, it might be harder for policymakers to track and understand the frontier of AI.
Lots to think about there.
Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder.
Okay.
Given this truly exponential growth in power and resource demands for AI supercomputers, and this trend towards concentration, what are the long-term consequences?
Consequences socially, environmentally.
Exactly. What are the impacts down the line? And maybe the biggest question, with all this incredible computational capability being built, who ultimately stands to benefit the most from it?